There was a jolly Dutchman, his name was Johnny Rebeck. He made the finest sausages of sauerkraut and speck. He made the finest sausages that you have ever seen, till one day he invented the sausage making machine. Oh, Mr. Johnny Rebeck, how could you be so mean? We told you you'd be sorry for inventing that machine. Now all the neighbors' cats and dogs will never more be seen. They've all been ground to sausages in Johnny Rebeck's machine.
All right, welcome Camp Crosley friends and families to the next episode of the Crosley Campfire Chats. And again, the purpose of these chats is to do what we do best, and that's to bring people together. Our next guest is a former alumni of Camp Crosley named Whit Spurgeon. Thank you, Whit Spurgeon, for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Whit, you're a former alumni, and from what I understand, you're a Muncie kid. Muncie and Camp Crosley go hand in hand. So how many summers did you attend, and in kind of what capacity were you involved with Camp Crosley?
Wow. Okay. Well, I want to say I didn't start going until I was like maybe 10 or 11. I know some kids started when they were 7 or 8, because when I was a counselor, we had kids younger than when I started. I might be wrong, but I want to say I started around 10 or 11, and I spent 3 or 4 years as a camper. Then I spent 1 year as leader in training, LITs, which in the movie Meatballs are called CITs.
Yeah.
And you're basically just super cheap labor. You're the person who's helping chop the firewood for the fires. Good old Tony. Tony would use you to do that kind of stuff, or replant the posts for the horseshoes or whatever.
So wait, I'm going to pause you right here.
Yeah.
So none of that has changed. We're still using the CITs and for cheap labor and everything. So we're still good on that. So
no, that's exactly right. And I mean, it's a good thing, because you kind of learn how to be a counselor when you're being a CIT. If I remember right, you were assigned to a cabin, just like and that counselor is who you would learn from. And I remember the year I was there, I spent time with like 2 or 3 different counselors. So I got to see how each one dealt with the kids and stuff. And then I spent 2 or 3 years I spent 1 year as kitchen staff. So 1 year as an LIT, 1 year as kitchen staff. Aunt Sally. Oh my God, I loved that woman. That lady, when I met her, it seemed like she was already like 148 years old, and just as ornery and hardworking as anyone you would ever meet. But she had a great sense of humor. And when you first met her, she was scary, but then the longer you worked for her, the more you liked her, and what a great thing to be able to learn how to do things like how to make like 60 pancakes at a time on a plancha with what I used to call the paca machine. You'd pour the batter after you made the batter, you'd pour the batter into the thing, and it had a handle, and then you'd hold it over the thing and just do out one pancake at a time, paca, and then 3 rows. And then once you'd done the paca machine, you set it aside, and then you'd flip the pancakes in the same order that you'd put them down. And then by the time you got back to the top and flipped them off, they were perfect. It was just amazing to learn something like that when you're 15 years old. Like, wow, this works. And then after I was kitchen staff, I was a counselor. I was a junior counselor for a year, and then a counselor for a couple of years.
Okay.
So,
well,
yeah.
I mean, so you've gone from experiences at camp as a camper and experiences as a staff person. So I know sometimes those worlds are shared, but then some of those experiences are very different from a counselor and from a camper, and we'll dive a little bit into that as well.
Cool.
We always have those stories, and you kind of went into it a little bit already. That old adage, remember that time at camp, or it's always remember that time at band camp. So for you, when someone comes to you and something pops up, and you're like, oh, I remember that one time at camp. What is that one story? And whether it's a camper or a staff person, or maybe both. Let's go both. When we bring up camp as a camper, remember that one time at camp. What pops in your head? And remember that one time at camp as a staff person.
Boy, man, there are so many of those for me. Gosh, that is so hard. I mean, I remember places and feelings there more than I remember specific events. Like all of the campfires were amazing, whether they were down on Sandy Beach or whether they were up in the main campground. I remember the cabins, and I loved it when the camp was super full because I loved the really old cabins, which I'm sure have been completely rebuilt by now. But if you only had like half full camp, you'd be up in the newer cabins. And then as it filled up more, you go down to those ones way at the end of the line where they hadn't been painted white. They were still like the original wood, I loved that stuff. There were so many things though. I mean, sing-alongs and hanging out. And I mean, I was a sailor, so I loved doing that. I loved anything that took place in the chapel, just because I loved the building so much. Oh, I've got one that I loved. Kyle Carr one year. There goes one of those planes I was telling you about. Kyle Carr one year built out the coolest live haunted house in the chapel that I have ever had the joy to experience, and I was like a crazy guy with an axe, and he had people who had been impaled by shovels. He was really good at like stage makeup and stuff like that. And that was so much fun because, each cabin would come through separately and we would scare them as they'd go along. But that was great. Gosh, so many memories. Yeah, I don't know how to pinpoint one or the other than, again, I loved the campfires. I loved anything in chapel, all the swimming and skiing and all that stuff. Learning how to do things you didn't know how to do, like archery. I'd never done archery until I was there, and I ended up loving it. I'd never fired a BB gun or a rifle. And, even though I don't own a gun now, I'm glad that I have that skill set. Just a ton of great things to learn. Oh, and I remember the foreign exchange counselors very fondly.
Which we still get. I mean, we still get quite a number of international staff from all over the place. And so, I mean, that's still a continued experience for the campers. And so another question I want to kind of follow up with you. So your times as a camper and then as a staff, and some of this may be a repeat, but what made you decide to come back year after year? What was it about camp that made you decide you come back year after year after year?
I'd love to make a joke about this and say, my parents just couldn't put up with me every summer. They had to get rid of me, but that's really not true. No, I begged to come back every year. And here's the thing. I made so many great friendships with other campers, but I would say at the end of the day, it was the counselors. And I don't know if I'm unusual in that sense. My father is the same way. A lot of my friends are people who are older than I am. My dad was most of my dad's friends were from the generation that preceded him. And my grandmother told me once it was because he was good at talking to adults when he was a kid. And I was kind of the same way. But I really looked forward every year, not to maybe seeing some of the same campers, but I wanted to come back and see the counselors that I really loved, like Mary Lichtenberger and Carol and Nola and Kyle Carr and all those guys, the two brothers, not Kyle and his brother, but I can't think of their name. Jason. I
think one of them was a sheriff for Kosciuszko.
Yes, one of them.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, every time I talk to him, I'm like, I know you're a great cop. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because you were a great counselor. You knew how to talk to people who were doing well and people who were misbehaving without coming down like a ton of bricks, Yeah, Jason and Jeff. That's who they were. Yeah. I love those guys. But I mean, every year I knew that when I went back that most of them, Kirby. Mm-hmm. God, I loved Kirby so much. These guys were just amazing. And, the people that I trained with, Andy Diaz, who was a CIT with me, an LIT. And it was usually the counselors that really made me excited about coming back, because they were like your surrogate parents, but they were also your friends. They were teaching you how to be, I don't know, a citizen, a human being, instead of just a thing.
Well, I mean, I know it's kind of cheesy, but they were exactly what they were supposed to be, role models for you, right?
Yes, right.
And I mean, that's exactly role modeling the way that people should behave in society. And so, man, and so the great thing is, though, maybe that's the same thing that we're trying to achieve even today. So, I mean, it's great to hear that that was going on back then. So Whit, I mean, sounds like a lot of great memories, a lot of great things happen at camp for you. So what is life like now for Whit Spurgeon? I mean, I know things have, reading kind of your bio. I mean, you've been kind of busy in a lot of different areas. And so kind of let everybody know what's life been like for Whit.
Well, I'm one of those people who actually went and did the thing that I said I wanted to do since I was 10, which was acting. I figured out when I was 10 years old, I want to be an actor. And I actually chased my dream. And what's that's resulted in is a very fulfilling life, but not a very wealthy life, but wealthy in other ways. I mean, let's see, I went to college at Syracuse, New York, which is a great acting department. Spent a year in London while I was there. Came back to Muncie, worked at the newspaper for a couple of years to earn some money to move north to Chicago. Spent 20 some years in Chicago in mostly the theater scene. That's a commercial scene there too. And while I was there, I appeared in about 36 television commercials that played around the country and stuff. But in literally probably 5 or 6 dozen plays. It's a great stage scene. It's a great place to learn how to be a really good actor. And then I moved to LA in 2009, and since then I've been on ABC on Fresh Off the Boat and Cougar Town, small but speaking roles. I've been in some horror films. The one that would be probably appropriate for Crosley audience is called Chastity Bites. Some other ones, maybe look out. I've also appeared for the young people. I'm in an episode of Liza on Demand. There's a gal named Liza Koshy who got famous on YouTube, and then they built an actual sitcom around her called Liza on Demand, which runs on YouTube Red or YouTube Premium. And so, yeah, I mean, and there's other credits, but those are like the big ones where you can find me and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I'm having a ball. I love living out here, but I've always kind of been that way. Like, I love wherever I live is home. Because, in between all that stuff, before I moved to LA, I did spend 1 year in Syracuse, Indiana, where my family had a lake house on Lake Wawasee, and I worked at the Goshen Holiday Inn as a waiter in their fine dining restaurant, because up there I didn't have to pay rent, and it was a way to save more money to move to Chicago before I moved to Chicago. So, I mean, I spent a year in Syracuse in the winter when it goes from having 37,000 people to 2,500 people. And I loved that town. They had the best library I've ever been to. If they didn't have a book, they'd get it for you from Indianapolis or Fort Wayne. And they'd call you. Hi, Whit, we got your Robert B. Parker novels you wanted from Indianapolis. Come in anytime. I mean, So basically, I guess I've just been bouncing around, trying to get the most out of life and making good friends and trying to make good work. Oh, also now in Los Angeles, as well as an actor, I also direct short films. Some have gotten into festivals and won awards. I also work with a company, a film collective, which is now a full-blown production service as well, called We Make Movies. And with We Make Movies, I run an international film festival that's in its 3rd year this year, called the We Make Movies International Film Festival. So I've kept busy.
So did Kyle Carr make an appearance in your horror film?
No.
Okay, no.
But
okay.
he's a great inspiration. He made, when I was in high school. Okay, Kyle was 2 years ahead of me in high school. So when I was a freshman, we went to Muncie Northside High School. He was a junior. Or he might have even been a senior. It might have been 3 years. I think he was only 2, though. But Kyle in high school made a spoof of Dawn of the Dead called Twilight of the Teddy. And it was basically a ray from outer space turns all stuffed animals on the planet into flesh-eating zombies. And he did all these effects, literally like people getting torn in half, just like in those movies. You know what I mean? And it was literally, when I saw that, I was like, this guy, Kyle Carr, he can do anything. And I've still, at this point in my life, I still keep thinking it would be nice to make a short film and see if he could come out and be in it. You know what I mean? Like fly him out to LA and go, Kyle, you got to be in my film.
Maybe this is the start of that conversation right here. Right.
Well, you know, I actually said to him at one point, dude, we should expand the Twilight of the Teddy script, because I actually think I think a studio might actually be interested in that because it's so ridiculous and so awesome.
There we go. You heard it right here on Crosley Campfire Chats. Twilight of the Teddy, right here.
The Twilight of the Teddy coming in 2025. Yeah.
Well, so thinking back, I mean, so you've been a part of a lot of TVs, movies. So what's been your, whether it be directing or acting, what's been, and again, you may not have a favorite, but what maybe has one of your most memorable, most favorite roles that you've been able to be a part of?
Oh, wow. Well, in Chicago, I was fortunate enough to be in 2 Rebecca Gilman plays, which were world premieres. And Rebecca Gilman, I would just say to people, look her up. I don't think anything of hers has ever been made into a movie, but she's won a lot of awards on Broadway and in London. And I was in 2 of her earliest plays, world premieres, back when she lived in Chicago. And those were amazing. One is called Crime of the Century. One was called The Glory of Living. That was her very first big play. But I also played Alderman Tom Keene in His Honor in Chicago, which was a 3-year running hit at Prop Theater, where we were reenacting a big chunk of the life of the original Mayor Daley. And that was great fun because everybody who was anybody, and also I think everybody who was over the age of 55 in Chicago came to see that play because they wanted to see their dead king. Yeah. I mean, Daley was the king of Chicago. He was, and that's the old Daley, 1950s through 1970s. And so that was great fun because that was like a celebrity play where, enough people saw it, or there were enough stories in the newspapers and on the evening news about our play that I would walk up the street and somebody would go, Alderman Keene, and it'd be like, oh, hey, how you doing? That kind of thing. So that was fun. But out here, it's interesting. I mean, I like it all. The reason I decided to start directing is because once you start doing enough commercials or TV or film, you start to realize how things work. And I've got kind of an analytical mind. So it's like, I wonder what it would be like to make my own stuff. And so, the Liza on Demand set was great fun as an actor, but I also do love directing, but I will say I'm not an actor who really wants to be a director. Like now I've directed about 8 or 9 films and I like directing. And if I see something I want to direct, or if I have an idea for a film, I'll make it, but I prefer acting. Like if I could just do nothing but act, that's what I do. And I love it. But the greatest thing to me about this business isn't the individual things. It is that being on a good film set or being on a good TV set is very often the same vibe that you get at a place like camp, because it's a collaborative art form. We like to talk about movie stars and TV stars and directors and writers, but any weak links in that group means that it's not going to be a great thing. It might be a good thing, it might be an okay thing, but it'll never be great. But when you work with a group of people, because, if you're on set, it's like 24 people running a production, or at least a dozen for a very small production. And so you got to get along with everybody and you've got to know how to make everybody work as a group. And that is a huge lesson that I got out of camp, was that it's better to work together to solve problems. And it's better to get along than the other option, not getting along. It's better to, yeah.
So let's dig into that a little bit deeper. I mean, it's a great little segue right into the next question is, so what were some of the things that you learned while being at camp that you use today in your everyday life? That was a perfect example. So what are some other things that you've learned at camp that, I mean, you're just glad that you were able to take it with you to be able to do this?
Well, what I just said is maybe the single most valuable, which is that it's so much better. And let me add to that. It's more rewarding to be, for me at least, it's more rewarding to achieve something with other people than it is to achieve something on your own. Like, I like singing. Whether I'm a good singer or not, I like singing. And I like singing by myself, but I love singing in a group, because then you make harmonies and it's like, wow, a bunch of us together can make this whole different, bigger sound, which is awesome. And that's the same thing when you make a movie, whether it's a short film or a television show or a full-length feature or whatever. At the end of the day, you're not just sitting there going, wow, I did great work, I'm awesome. You're sitting there with other people and you're spending a lot of your time leaning over to somebody and going, you're great in this scene. Like, you're amazing in this movie. Like, wow, look at the art direction. We had such a great set decorating person. Hey, Denise, good job. That is a wonderful feeling. The collective feeling of making something bigger and better than you could make on your own is huge. And the other thing, I guess, is like, I don't know, problem solving skills that, camp is really good at teaching you that failure is not disastrous. Failure is part of the pathway to success. To be really good at anything, you've got to be bad at it at first and then get better at it. And it's only after, what do they say, 10,000 hours of it that you're really, really good at something. And I mean, I don't think I became a really good actor until my mid 30s. And that was after 25 years of acting. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I was a bad actor before, but I didn't have it never felt like it came completely naturally until midlife. And I mean, that's something that camp teaches you too. And also, I don't know, conflict resolution, which is huge at camp. Like, if two kids don't get along, you teach them how to get along, you teach them how to get together, figure out what they have in common, shake hands if they disagree, stop losing your mind for a minute and just take a moment and think about what the other person's feeling. And that's huge in life. I wish more people would do that. Oh, and another thing I loved about camp. Sorry, I'm doing that that weird, I'm going from one thing to another. But another thing I loved about camp was, even though I came back for the counselors, one of the things I loved every year was meeting kids that weren't like me, that weren't from my neighborhood. They might be from a different part of Muncie. They might be richer or poorer. They might have a completely different background. They might not be from Muncie. They might be from a different state. And I think that I wish more kids were exposed to kids outside of their own, 4-block area when they were young. I think it would help them a great deal.
Man, those are some great points right there, Whit. I mean, and what's so amazing is that many of the things that you mentioned, as far as things that you've learned while your time at camp, are things that we try to implement even still today, because we feel that those things, conflict resolution, being able to expand your circle, right? Being able to meet new people and being able to cooperate and figure out how, when we do disagree, how do we still move forward? And those are all things that we still teach at camp. And so, man, that is great to hear, and man, that is just awesome. So, COVID's here. I mean, it's still been around for a year. I mean, so what's life been like for you? Any new hobbies or anything like that? I mean, during COVID, what does Hollywood look like right now?
Well, a lot of things. It's weird because The movie industry and the television industry is mostly unionized. There are still films that are made, especially short films, that are non-union, because those kind of films can't afford union people. But because there's a strong union, we were one of the first industries to actually get like solid protocols in place for how do you make a production happen in the midst of COVID. So we, like everybody else, like completely shut down for 3 months. There were a lot of Zoom readings where it'd be somebody, people are still writing scripts. People have still got stuff in development. So they still want to be able to do that thing. But where normally you'd have a table read on a stage somewhere and the 12 actors would meet in a theater or in someone's large apartment, now we're having them online and having the talkbacks afterwards. My film festival that I'm one of the 2 co-directors of and the founders of, our first year, 2019, we had live in a theater on a movie screen, all this stuff. And then this past year, we had to go virtual. And we went, the whole festival was online, and it was remarkably a huge success. And but the good thing is we're going to, with what we learned, we're going to fold that cyberspace aspect of the festival into the live festival going forward. We're going to have more of an internet presence every year than we did the first year. So now, once the industry started like rebooting, there have been online auditions. I've been able to go to a few of those. And that's probably the wave of the future. Most auditions used to take place in a casting director's office. I think from now on, most initial auditions, even after COVID is gone, now that all actors know how to use Zoom and how to use these social media things, a lot of casting directors are just going to go, the initial audition is going to be here. If we have callbacks, we'll bring you in. So what a lot of actors and people like myself have been doing is learning how to use technology better. And, I've been a film director, but I've never been an editor. I've been learning how to do things like work with Final Cut Pro so that I can start editing my own stuff. I'm doing more voiceover stuff. Here's my microphone with the spit screen on it. That's what, that's the pea popper stopper or whatever. But, I got myself a decent microphone. So that's kind of what's been going on. And we're now finally, the California numbers are starting to go down again. Vaccines are being trotted out, and as this happens, things will get more back to normal. But it's going to be a new normal, and I'm really psyched that I've learned these skills I've learned. There's a silver lining to everything, brother. And that's another thing you learn at Camp Crosley. Is that in adversity, there is always some kind of payoff as well. If you get through it, there's a good chance you're going to learn something. Or, yeah.
I mean, you've brought up another great point, right? I mean, camp also teaches about perseverance, being able to make your way through and being flexible and adaptable. I mean, exactly. I mean, instead of saying, "Oh, I quit," all right, well, how do we move forward with this despite our circumstances? And so, again, a great teaching point from that angle. So, Whit, I mean, we're kind of at the end of our interview. I appreciate it, and apparently we have a song from you from when you were at camp, very popular from what you've said, and so I'm excited because I don't think I've heard this song, and I take great pride in knowing most camp songs. So this will be good for me from that standpoint. So. Whenever you are ready, Whit, go ahead and take it away.
Let me give you a lead in on this song. I'm pretty sure that the counselor who first sang this, and I might be wrong, so if I'm misremembering and leaving anybody out, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure it was Kyle Carr. And if you know Kyle, this song was right up his alley. It's a little bit off the beaten track. And I will also say that this is a song that might not have made the cut these days, but back then, boy, the kids loved this song, and it was called Johnny Rebecca's Machine. And it went like this. I'm only going to sing 2 verses and the chorus twice because it's one of those like 8-verse songs that would go on forever otherwise. But you'll see what I mean. There was a jolly Dutchman, his name was Johnny Rebeck. He made the finest sausages of sauerkraut and speck. He made the finest sausages that you have ever seen, till one day he invented the sausage-making machine. Oh, Mr. Johnny Rebeck, how could you be so mean? We told you you'd be sorry for inventing that machine. Now all the neighbors' cats and dogs will never more be seen. They've all been ground to sausages in Johnny Rebeck's machine. One day the machine got busted, the darn thing wouldn't go. So Johnny Rebeck just climbed inside to see what made it so. His wife was having nightmares and walking in her sleep. She gave the crank a terrible yank and Johnny Rebeck was meat. Oh, Mr. Johnny Rebeck, how could you be so mean? We told you you'd be sorry for inventing that machine. Now all the neighbors' cats and dogs will never more be seen. They've all been ground to sausages in Johnny Rebeck's machine.
All right. Thank you very much, Whit. Oh, I love it. We'll certainly consider that in maybe around meal times. We'll talk to Renee about that as she's cooking her meal.
She'll remember it. I swear she'll remember it. But the only song that got kids more excited, a few of us, including myself and some other counselors, we used to sing Queen's We Will Rock You. After lunch because the kids love. Back then, you guys have different tables now.
Yeah.
The tables back then were these giant wooden things. They were like Viking ships. They were so solid. And the benches too. And so the kids could pound on the table for the stomping noise and clap. And so We Will Rock You was awesome with that whole camp going on. But this was probably the other song that was the most like just getting the kids like riled up. You know, they loved this song.
Oh, so like I said, we'll certainly talk to Renee and about that and the Johnny Rebeck song and see if hey, maybe it'll make an appearance this summer. That's for sure. So I appreciate it, Whit, and certainly want to thank our guest Whit Spurgeon and the great stories and the great lessons that he shared with all of us. And I hope that you join us for our next episode of the Crosley Campfire Chat. And I just want all of you to remember that this is good night and not goodbye. Thank you very much.
Crosley forever. There was a jolly Dutchman, his name was Johnny Rebeck. He made the finest sausages of sauerkraut and speck. He made the finest sausages that you have ever seen, till one day he invented the sausage-making machine. Oh, Mr. Johnny Rebeck, how could you be so mean? We told you you'd be sorry for inventing that machine. Now all the neighbors' cats and dogs will never more be seen. They've all been ground to sausages in Johnny Rebeck's machine.